From the Post Building in downtown North St. Louis, this is Inside City. This week, I sat down with Zack Boyers, Chairman and CEO of U.S. Bank Impact Finance, a leading division of U.S. Bank focused on community lending and structured finance. With a career spanning 3 decades at U.S. Bank, Boyers joined the organization in 1994 and has since accumulated extensive experience in commercial banking and community development. Zack, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And I'm really excited to have you here because you've been in St. Louis for a long time through U.S. Bank. You know, as far as one of the things that always interests me is people who are not from here who end up here and stay here. And so I think you're originally from New York, Saratoga Springs. Yep. And I'd like to understand how you got here. And then the follow-up would be, what did you find when you got here?
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. So I moved here literally about 2 weeks after I graduated from college. I was a Russian and Soviet studies major in college and thought I was going to go to law school, but decided I didn't want to.
And let's not bury the lead here. I think you went to Harvard, right? Let's throw that out there.
I did go to Harvard undergrad, so I was in Boston for 4 years and needed a job, and amazingly got an interview with the CEO of a predecessor bank of U.S. Bank called Mark Twain Bank. By the way, I had taken, no business courses, finance courses, had no background really in economics, but had a great interview with John Dubinsky.
I was wondering if it was Adam Aronson or it was John Dubinsky.
It was John Dubinsky, who was the CEO at the time, and had a great conversation with him. And he gave me a shot. And he offered a job for me to join the commercial banking operation of Mark Twain Bank. And so my wife and I moved here. My mother and stepfather had moved here 4 years prior. And so I had a sense of St. Louis, but hadn't spent a lot of time. And, we really fell in love with it. It was such an interesting city. Again, moving from the East Coast to the Midwest, immediately loved elements that were, I think, specific to the neighborhoods of St. Louis. We moved first to an apartment a block away from Forest Park and found that to be an enormous asset. The first home we moved into was in Tower Grove South a year and a half later. So a block away from Tower Grove Park, which is, again, an enormous asset. We found the Midwestern nice to be a nice shift and change from the Northeast bustle and hustle, I guess.
And this would have been in the early, 92, 94, something
moved
like
here
that?
In 1994.
Yeah,
moved here in 1994.
Just right at 30 years ago.
Yeah, literally 30 years ago.
And I think at that point, if I have this right, U.S. Bancorp was about 5-6 years old. And was that something that was at Mark Twain already, or through an acquisition showed up with it?
You mean Impact Finance? Or
that's what I meant.
Yeah, or was then Community Development Corporation. Correct. That business unit of the bank started at Mark Twain in 1986. So it was about 8 years in. That was not the group I joined at first. 3 years in to my career, was employee number 5 at the Community Development Corporation at the time, and joined that group. And one of the things I will say is that I was struck by what was clearly a once great city. Again, moving from the northeastern sort of part of the world and getting to see the bones of a beautiful. The architecture was amazing. The institutions were world class. That was clear. And what was incredibly compelling to me at the time, in my mid-20s, was the opportunity to play a role in helping to revitalize it through banking products and services, which I probably wouldn't have anticipated just a few years prior.
And you made a distinction there between Impact Finance and U.S. Bank. And so are those just structurally one owns the other, they run parallel? What's the difference between the two?
We are a business unit of the bank. That's the way I would describe it. We are the business unit of the bank that through its tax credit investing and lending products enables the development of affordable housing, investments in economic development, particularly in distressed or disinvested communities. Our group also enables the generation of renewable sources of energy and historic restorations.
And this would be what people have called the triple bottom line before everybody was doing that. That the idea is you obviously have to make money as a business.
Yeah.
That people like to work there, but then you have some type of impact. A lot of times it's environmental, but in this case, it seems like you guys have done a lot of social. That's a very important kind of the mission of the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's sort of this mix of generating financial, social, and environmental returns. We think about all of that through the work that we do, and impact has always been a component of the thing that we focus on. You can phrase it any way you want. Doing well by doing good was in the mid '90s a kind of radical idea that you can do well by doing good. This has been a kind of hallmark for our organization from the start. It's shape-shifted over time, but that has been a kind of foundational concept for us.
And banks are always risk averse. You don't need. I mean, I think it's if you have one bad loan in 100, you're considered that's not good. Even a very low percentage. Do you feel that this sort of thing were you taking on risky investments, or how do you de-risk something? Is it just that no, it's not any riskier than anything else? It's just you roll the impact into it. How does that weigh in on something like that?
We have maintained from the start that the only way to do this at scale and to generate the impact that we need to that we want to have and to sustain the effort in the way that it needs to be sustained, you got to do it with great professionalism, and you have to underwrite and manage risk. One of the things that I think attracted me to this arena, this industry, was the idea that we could use tools, what some people would think are esoteric tools, like these tax credit incentives, to really manage down the risk and make it safe to invest and to loan capital. And so, what we have developed is, an amazing team. By the way, I work with an amazing team of people much smarter than I am, who have expertise in doing this. And it's a way of marrying the concepts of structured finance to outcomes and impact that we want to have in communities, for our customers, for the environment.
So for people who may not be aware, and you talked about structured finance, is there a way to simplify that a little bit just to make it more understandable for the person on the street?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I'll do my best. I mean, I think the idea is that we bring together different sources of funds, different sources of capital, some that have sort of more compliance risk, that are incentives for private capital, private actors like banks and other investors to bring to places that wouldn't more naturally
could
flow.
Be historic tax credits, low income housing,
new markets, credits
any
in
one of
particular.
those.
Yeah, any one of those kinds of things. And those are essentially incentives that de-risk a particular transaction or project.
And those generally come from the public sector, the feds,
Correct.
The state, the city, something like that.
That's exactly right. Yes, and we utilize both federal, state, and then work very closely with public actors in the city here in St. Louis. St. Louis Development Corporation has been a good partner to us for many, many years, and play a role oftentimes in bringing those actors together in order to affect a change or make something happen that might not otherwise happen.
And the Impact Finance Group really, I think, started with, if I have this right, affordable housing, one thing in Duluth. And then it has gone in there, and you guys, I believe, maybe, if not, I think you may be the largest, if I say syndicator or backer of affordable housing in the United States, if I have that right, or one of the main players.
We're a major player in the affordable housing space. We're one of the largest investors in the new market tax credit space. Yeah, we started off with a deal in Duluth, Minnesota, about $1 million, a smaller deal here in St. Louis with the St. Louis Equity Fund, way back again in the late 80s, but have since evolved that product set. One of the things that we're I'd say proud of is sort of we're happy but never satisfied. And so we continue to innovate new products. We moved into the historic tax credit realm. We moved into the new market tax credit space in the early 2000s. And then after that, into the environmental finance space. We are a tax credit syndicator, or another way to say that is that we'll invest our own equity capital, get tax credits, and then sell or syndicate them to other large taxpayers. And we are, in fact, the largest, if not one of the largest tax credit syndicators in the country.
That's great. So let's kind of then tie this back to St. Louis.
Sure.
And when you got here in the 90s, I think I read that one of your first, if not the first, was a city museum. And for people, I've been here long enough to recall that building, the International Shoe Building.
Yeah.
Bob Castley was, I think, a well-regarded sculptor, did some work at different zoos and different products you'd see around. But if I remember right, it was a 600,000 square foot building and $1 a square foot, and Bob bought it. And I think a lot of people were kind of like, well, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And but you guys were part of that. And it would seem like there's a whole lot of risk there, or even, but talk about working with him. He was a really interesting guy, and just how you got involved in that project.
Yeah, well, my predecessor, Kathy Bader, who started the Community Development Corporation at Mark Twain Bank, and continues to be a player in the space, she invited me to take a look at that deal. And, it is one of many that were very exciting at the time. Again, the way to get from here to there was to understand what tools were available to, again, make it possible to invest not only in the project itself, but in a community that at the time was not thriving. So what these tax credits allowed for, again, is essentially capital to flow where it wouldn't otherwise flow. And so, we were able to, as you mentioned, sort of de-risk that transaction, and it's one of many that we're really proud of. For me at the time, as I mentioned, to be 25, 26 years old, and to be able to take some of these incredibly beautiful, large, and also largely empty buildings and put them back into use, as part of a vision for what a downtown could be, that was a really heady experience, and I think led us to a place where we understood that you couldn't just do one building. If you're going to do that building and invest means, for a period of time, then you're going to need to do more. And so we ended up, again, marrying these tools to the impacts we wanted to see. We were involved in the first real loft residential buildings in downtown St. Louis at that time, both for sale and market rate apartments. Again, similar model though, leveraging these tools and bringing the rest.
Was that with like Craig Heller and John Stefan and Dave Jump and a few others, I guess?
It was Craig and the McGowan brothers and Dave Jump. Yeah, absolutely. All early, what I would call Amos Harris, early pioneers. 25 years ago.
And I mean, I think at the time, we a lot of people are rightfully distressed about downtown in certain ways, but not everybody recalls what downtown was back then. My understanding is there were a couple of hundred vacant buildings that, it was really a lot of the stuff that people had moved out, the garment district, there were places, jewelry and watch places that were long gone.
Yeah.
The storefronts really weren't working at all. And, but there were still, the buildings were still there.
Yeah, it was a time, I think, there's plenty of work to do now in downtown, and we can talk about that. And I know you and I are both committed, and others are, to seeing the trajectory continue to improve. But I will say that downtown in the mid 90s, while it was an employment hub in many respects, it was not a 24/7 environment. And, areas of the garment district in particular that you mentioned, on Washington Avenue, for example, you could have had in the middle of the day, a 10-on-10 soccer game sitting right in the middle of the street and not had to move for a car. It had nightclubs at night, but there was nothing else going on. And so when we and other, I would say, real other visionaries created, a picture of what it could be, it was a very exciting opportunity to put into motion. And again, we're humble to the pioneers who took the risk, and also recognize that we play a very particular role in that, which is bringing some financing expertise to the table. But it was an exciting opportunity for collaboration, partnership, and imagining what our once great downtown could be.
So there was an article, maybe about 6 or 8 months ago in the New York Times about there are all these regional banks, and they didn't pick out St. Louis in particular, but the idea that you have Bank of America, which took out Boatman's, and Mark Twain Bank isn't around anymore, and you have all these regional banks that are no longer around, and you had people in those communities that were willing to take on projects in those communities, and that there is a loss with the PNCs and the ones that are not based here, and that you have the local players that are willing to get in there and figure out how you're going to get a solution, because it's just assumed, oh, well, you're going to do a project and the financing, the dollars are going to be there, but we've lost something from what was there 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is evolving. I mean, that's true. I think that's true for a lot of cities. The headquarters of U.S. Bank is Minneapolis. For Impact Finance, about half of our employee base of Impact Finance is in St. Louis. St. Louis remains a very critical hub of employment for U.S. Bank. We've got about 4,000 employees here. So I would say that this remains a critical market for U.S. Bank. I think perhaps maybe more importantly, but at least importantly, I'll say, is that, we're looking for partners and people to collaborate with wherever we do business. And we're also willing, and in fact, I think have a bit of a record of being willing to take on, I just say, the challenges that face a community. And, in St. Louis, we believe that a thriving downtown is important to create a vibrant region. And, it's a region that I think has enormous opportunity. And we believe that, we and other actors can play a role in making sure that trajectory is what we want it to be.
I mean, because arguably you've got more down here right now with, I don't know, 5,000, 8,000 residents. A lot of work has been done.
Yep.
Maybe it's more complicated because if you have not much there, sometimes it's going to be easier to stand something up as opposed to people are in there, and it can be a little more complex. But arguably, I would say we would have more of a base now than what we had 30 years ago.
I think there's no question about that. I think, we have to recognize, and this is across the country, as you know, in other cities as well, there's a shift. And that, I think, yes, we need more employees. We need more density in downtown St. Louis. And I think we need more employees. I think we need more residents. And I think that, the pandemic has, and sort of the hybrid work model that has, I think, emerged, has changed some of the calculus. And so we need to be really thoughtful about where our resources go and how our investments attract and compel that density that we need to have on the street, sort of 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, what is the business case for it? Again, another article in the Times talked about, in the post-COVID world, are the ones that are hit the hardest are the ones that are like a monoculture of a strong CBD, and the ones that are doing better, like a Nashville, just have that blend of the live, work, play, and that's the more successful model anyway, as opposed to getting in your car and driving wherever. And so to some extent, we've got that base. We have people who live on Wash Ave. We've got the infrastructure. It seems that we just don't have as far that we need to go as what you guys were involved with.
I agree. I mean, I'm optimistic that we can, in fact, take advantage of build on the opportunities. And one of the things I'll say is that in our experience, we have, during that, let's say 25-year period, we invested and helped to finance, 60 plus buildings in downtown. It was just an enormous number of transactions, again, with incredible developers, visionaries, in partnership with other actors, the city and others. But one of the things that I think we learned is that it's not just about the building. It's about what's outside the envelope of the buildings. It's about what connects assets to each other, the experience of the pedestrian, what makes a neighborhood a great place to live. And I I think we're getting more attuned. We've gotten more attuned to what those elements are, and I think we really need to focus on building the sort of quality of life things that make a neighborhood attractive to a whole mix of people, which is what downtown should be.
And I've heard it said that St. Louis does the bricks and mortar pretty well. Like we have the downtown library that got
Oh
repaired,
yeah.
the war memorial, the arch, but we tend to fall short on the program side of it. In other words, but that's really what people want. They just assume the infrastructure will be there, and then let's throw a party or something. And so that's a good thing for us to focus on, I think.
Yeah, I do too. We have such great, like I said, we have such great assets and also beautiful architecture that did and does continue to need to be restored and invested in. So don't get me wrong, there's been a good amount of work and effort oriented towards a couple of key, very large, invisible buildings in downtown that remain undeveloped and disinvested. And so those are areas of important focus. I do believe in order to create the density that you want to see and attract residents of all kinds, you really do need to program the space to compel people to want to not just come visit but stay.
So you've been very involved in the historic tax credits. That really is specific to this area. You've also got the environmental or the like solar, the
Mhm.
non-traditional things, and you mentioned new market tax credits, and so talk more about that program specifically and how. I don't know if an old building that's gotten an historic tax credit can go back again, or but how would a developer or somebody use a new market tax credit to how would that be involved?
Yeah, so the new market tax credit is a program that incentivizes private capital to go specifically to uh, uh, low income qualified census tracts. So that is a defined term, particularly to enable commercial activity. So commercial activity, if you think about it, it's almost like a sibling to the affordable housing, which is to create affordable housing. New market tax credit is there to generate economic development in disinvested communities. So that can be for office buildings, small business lending. It's an incredibly flexible and adaptable program. It can be for health centers, community centers. It can be used for all of those things, which makes it incredibly powerful because it's a tool that can address the specificity of a community's particular challenge. So in that way, the new market tax credit has been used, for example, in downtown St. Louis for the MX district, for multiple mixed use projects throughout downtown. We've invested about $500 million in new market tax credit equity in the last 20 years, about 150 million of it up and down Washington Avenue alone. So that really has been a critical tool to build sort of that infrastructure foundation. I think that you see, and that where progress has occurred over the last 25 years, it's been a really powerful tool for us to leverage.
So the Bancorp Impact Finance has been recognized as a great place to work, and so and having been there for 30 years, you've been a big part of that. And so, in terms of things like work from home and those types of things, hybrid work, are you guys back in the office? Or how has that worked, and how have you guys been able to navigate those things and still hopefully be called a great place to work?
Yeah. I appreciate that, and it's something that we pay a lot of attention to. We want to attract and retain, the best possible talent, and so being a place that is a great place to work is absolutely critical. It's a culture that we continue to invest in. We, for over a year now, have been back in the office. Most of our folks are in 3 or more days a week in the office. That's the expectation. And it's been exciting to be back in actual person with one another, and I think it's an opportunity for all of us to get energy in a different way. We remain committed to creating and supporting flexibility in that. I think that's important. I think quite candidly, we had a pretty flexible culture before the pandemic, and we're continuing to lean into that now. I think importantly for us, what we focus on a lot, John, is you know, being a place where, we take our work seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So, we care about our work. We're a place that we talk about caring about each other. And that means, you try not to miss your kids' games. You try to, if you need to care for a family member, you do that. And we have fun. And, we should be able to balance all of those things out. And I think that results in a high performance culture where there aren't a lot of sharp elbows, but a lot of people feel really proud about the work that we do.
So we passed an anniversary, the Ferguson incidents with Michael Brown, and you became involved with Group Forward through Ferguson. So take us back to 2014, where you were.
Yeah.
You obviously felt this was important enough to get involved. Have written letters to the mayor and been on different panel discussions.
Sure.
Talk about why you got involved and why that was important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of things about that, and it has been a reflective period. 10 years later. First of all, I would say that as someone who's been in the community development arena at that point for 20 years, and whose organization had been involved in that, I think it forced us it challenged us to look at what we do and how we do it. How we show up as individuals, but also as an organization. And we have made some, I think, good decisions to bring intentionality to that, be more deliberate about the work that we do and how we do it since that time. I think the Ferguson Commission itself did us an amazing, gave us a gift. The Ferguson Commission was created. It was an enormously diverse group of individuals who spent a lot of time during the course of a year listening to community, the community that was clearly felt disenfranchised, and I think the data would suggest that there was real disparities and inequities that had to be addressed at a systemic level, and gave us a gift by saying it is not one thing that's going to solve this problem. And in fact, there are 187 recommendations, named accountable bodies to help advance progress against those recommendations. And I thought that was remarkable. I think it's fair to say that too often we, individuals, regions, look for the quick fix and what's going to be neatly tied up in a bow. And the Ferguson Commission refused to suggest that this would be a quick fix. It would require the commitment of everyone if we were in fact going to achieve racial equity in the St. Louis region. So when I was asked to be one of the two inaugural co-chairs of the legacy organization that continued on post-Ferguson Commission, Forward Through Ferguson, I was humbled by it. And I was offered the opportunity to join Rebecca Bennett as the other co-chair. Rebecca Bennett is, if you don't know her, one of the most amazing people that we have in this region, is a really inspirational leader. And to support Nicole Hudson, who was the original executive director at Forward Through Ferguson, I felt like it was an opportunity for me, but for us as an organization to play a role in this region that was critical. It's a significant undertaking, and there has been progress, but probably too slow and not enough. So, it was, like I said, it was humbling to be asked to involve myself in it, but the challenges are significant.
And obviously, you're never really done with something like that. At the time, there's significant issues on the police side. Enough, I think you co-wrote a letter to then Mayor Lyda Crewson about the new police chief and the idea that in terms of reform or all the issues that we saw, not just in St. Louis, but other cities like Minneapolis. And the question is, are we doing better? And sometimes it's hard to know if we are.
Yeah. I think, I have become thoughtful about who gets to name progress. And so, I think that's an important thing to consider. What I will say about St. Louis is that the civic conversation has changed, and
That's a start anyway, at least talking about it then.
That's right. And I think that needs to sustain. So I think the other thing I will say as somebody who has done, work in the field in multiple cities around the country, I think the understanding of the issues of systemic inequity, sort of the capacity to understand it here, has been significantly enriched and is among I'd say, the deepest in of cities around the country. That is foundational. It is my belief that we can't really make progress unless we understand the dynamics at play. And so that is a really important thing. I think that is a version of progress. What I'll say is, when we can't predict outcomes, wealth, income, health, infant mortality, for crying out loud, based on race, then we'll know that we have made the progress that we really need to make. And that's still not the case. But one of the most exciting things that I think emerged out of that period, that tumultuous period, was the cultivation of really new, young, diverse leaders. And I don't mean just racially diverse, although many of them are, in fact, people of color who have sort of come to the scene in St. Louis in a different way, and incredible leaders doing incredible work that I don't mean to be too maybe too flippant about saying it like this, but in some respects, it feels like a lot of us need to provide all the support we can to them and then get out of their way because they know what needs to be done and they know how to do it. And I think that's a very exciting version of progress, this burgeoning leadership group that's committed in an unflinching way to addressing the systemic inequities that have plagued us.
And unfortunately, that type of thing doesn't happen overnight. It
does not.
And part of the 2030 jobs plan that has been adopted by GSL, or really not adopted, but I think formulated and advanced, has to do with hiring and opportunities that are for everyone.
That's right. That's right. I think the adoption of the idea of inclusive growth, that it cannot be that we will not grow without inclusion, and really the version of inclusion, which is to say shared prosperity, will not happen without growth in this region. That the marriage of those two ideas needs to be not just stated, it needs to be enacted. And I think it's harder than it sounds. So I think making sure that the table is set for a diverse group of people, diverse group of actors who bring different versions of expertise to the table and to bear. I think that level of intentionality needs to continue to be present.
I mean, people want simple solutions to complex problems, and that complexity and giving everyone a seat at the table and how you advance. And it seems sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But given all the history that we have here, that is, I think, the opportunity, how best to move forward instead of looking outside of St. Louis, looking internally and providing those opportunities.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I do think that we have an opportunity to invite new ideas and other ways of doing things. So, I think I have come to love St. Louis. And as I say about a lot of the things I love the most, I consider myself a critical lover because I think we can be better. So I love St. Louis. It's my home. My kids are born and raised here and have just moved back. And so this is my home and I love it so much. I do think we can do better. And one of the things that I think we should pay a lot of attention to is inviting new ideas, inviting innovation, and really being humble to the notion that what we've done is good and what we can do needs to be better. So,
well, and I guess that's the trick as far as attracting and retaining young people. The statistic I've heard is that not St. Louis, but the state of Missouri is a net exporter of 20,000 graduates a year. If you look across the state to Mizzou and St. Louis University, WashU, Kansas City. And so they're coming here for the universities, but they're not staying. So why are they not staying? It gets back to opportunity, and they have to believe that there's something here to stay. And so, let's take us back to 30 years ago. There's a young Zack Boyers who's here, and and maybe you're in John Dubinsky's chair now and giving people that opportunity. I mean, it seems that we as a region need to start articulating and providing those opportunities as the path forward.
Yeah. Well, I cannot fill John Dubinsky's shoes. He's a titan and also a mentor. But I will say that I think you're right. We have to be thoughtful about making sure we're articulating and creating opportunities to thrive for everybody who's here in St. Louis, whether coming in for college or somebody born and raised here. I think we also need to pay a lot of attention to what young people are looking for. That is jobs and opportunity. It's also affordability. It's also what makes a city a fun place and dynamic place to be. And I think all the combination of all of those things will and can attract individuals. But one thing that is the sort of secret sauce about St. Louis that's still true. It was true 25 years ago. I believe it's true today. You can leave your mark here. You can make a mark. We have, in some ways, we have such an opportunity for the brilliance of a young person to have an impact and see it. I just think, again, we need to be more maybe explicit about inviting that and sort of clearing the path for that to happen. We need to prove it, like I said, by supporting some of the sort of young, sort of burgeoning class of leaders here in this marketplace. I think we need to prove that maybe a little more intensively by supporting it, and again, stepping aside and letting some of those young leaders flourish and really show what they've got, which is a terrific abundance of brilliance.
And I mean, there is something to that we're kind of the smallest big town you've ever seen, and that you can have that impact, and you can there is that opportunity there, and it's that people feeling like I can be here and welcome and do what we need to do. So, I mean, Zach, I think you're a relatively still young guy by some standards, and
I'll take it.
And yeah, you take it, you and me both. And so, but 30 years is a career, and so as you start to look then at the next however many years before you retire, but you still have some runway there. Well, what's next? I mean, as far as looking at what you've done and what those opportunities are that are still in front of you.
I mean, John, I have been really fortunate to have the career that I've had thus far. And I will say I'm an accidental banker, but to have had like I said, some of the mentors that I've gotten, but also the enormous support, honestly, that I and my organization, my group, has received from the bank. Support to grow, support to innovate, support to sustain an entrepreneurial culture, and in fact, to help the bank achieve its strategic objectives. It's been really fun. All of the things that we just talked about in the last period of time, to me, speaks to the ongoing opportunity. And a lot of my role has evolved. And part of the evolution is that it's evolved to creating space for a lot of people smarter than me on my team to do their work and to have the impact that they can have with customers, through customers, in communities, for the planet that they are so passionate about driving. So, I feel like we have a ton of opportunity to have, ever more impact and to help our customers achieve what they're trying to achieve in communities and throughout the country. And so I'm not done yet. That's what I'll say. I think my role has shifted, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to work with incredible partners and colleagues to this day. So I'm going to keep hammering at it for a while.
That's great. Well, thanks for coming by this morning.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.